Well, it's official. The 2023 NFL playoffs are starting to shape up as we have more teams eliminated and more teams clinching this week. So let's go ahead and break down the absolute madness of Week 15. Before we do, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments down below what you thought of this week and whether you think your favorite team has a chance at making the playoffs. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into these games. So kicking off things with Thursday Night Football, we have the Los Angeles Chargers losing in hilarious fashion to the Las Vegas Raiders 63-21. Oh boy, Chargers, how did you let that happen? That was a complete meltdown. That's a misrepresentation, that final score. This game wasn't even close from the get-go. The Raiders were just fully dominant, 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. 49-0 max lead, 42-0 at the half. How are you that inept as the Chargers? Especially with a defensive-minded head coach who had similar pieces in Los Angeles with the Rams as he is in Los Angeles with the Chargers, but yet he can't make things work in LA with the Chargers. How do you explain that? Was he really just helped that much by the Rams coaching staff? Is it really that inept? Or is he just sucking on his own? I don't know what it is, but finally he's gone, and the Chargers are now having to hit the reset button on the season. Meanwhile, the Raiders still keeping their hopes of a playoff berth slightly alive. Slightly more alive than the Chargers, I should say. But either way, this team is also kind of screwed. It was kind of a tank bowl. So the Raiders kind of lost by winning big. But either way, it's a happy night for the Raiders. Congrats. Alright, moving on to Saturday's slate of games here with the Minnesota Vikings falling to the Cincinnati Bengals in overtime, 27-24. Now, Minnesota, let's have an intervention here, okay? I know that you are, addicted to choking. Like, if choking was an addiction, you would be hooked on it from the get-go. But really, you were playing dominant against the Bengals throughout most of the game, and you still managed to find a way to collapse. How? That is incredible how you managed to do that. Meanwhile, Cincinnati, you are looking great. That was a critical game in your season to keep you alive. And now, looking at the picture, you are sitting at the 6th seed, which, by the way, is going to be going up there pretty soon. It's going to be coming up there, hopefully by the Power Rankings video. But either way, I digress. Looking at the Bengals, you guys now have a very legitimate shot. And your schedule the rest of the way, I mean, you don't have the easiest schedule, but you do have the Steelers coming up. You do have a game against the Chiefs, who are a little bit skimpy right now. And then you have a game at home against the Browns. So really, you have a chance to make some noise. Take advantage of it. All right, Pittsburgh going to the Super Bowl, baby. Pittsburgh losing to the Colts in a big fashion. Mike Tomlin needs to have his job done. Yeah, no. That was an absolute embarrassment for the Steelers. Yeah, let's just not talk about that as much. It was 30-13. And Mike Tomlin really punted on that game late in the game. Down by about, I think it was 13 or down by 11? You had a chance to put some pressure. It was down by 11. You had a chance to put some pressure on the Colts by kicking a 56-yard field goal at Boswell. Boswell is reliable in Heinz Field of all places. Not even just in a dome, but in Heinz Field from that distance. And you don't kick it in a dome. Like, really, Tomlin? I mean, that's just absolutely embarrassing. Meanwhile, the Colts, getting themselves a big win, are now have themselves as the 7th seed still. But that race has tightened up a little bit. Alright, going to Detroit now, where we have the Broncos coming to town to get absolutely hammered, 42-17. This game was absolutely over from the get-go. I mean, it was just bad. 5 touchdowns for Goff, 3 for Laporta. That is just insane numbers to have put up. And meanwhile, what did you do, Denver? You know the problem with Detroit. Force a couple turnovers against Detroit and you're going to win. They couldn't do that. And that is why Denver lost this game. And once again, Detroit, looking at it, Detroit controlling the ball, not turning the thing over. As long as you don't turn the ball over, Detroit, you are a damn good team. But let's just say for Denver, you were due for a loss, but really? In a blowout fashion to the Lions. Yeah, now you're going to be you dug yourself a hole with that one. You are 7-7, right now behind the Steelers at 11th seed. And you're a game behind the Colts, Texans, Bills, and Bengals, who are all in a 4-way tie for the last 2 playoff spots. So you're not looking real pretty at this point, Denver. That was a big game, and you blew it. All right, going to Cleveland now, where we have the Cleveland Browns beating the Chicago Bears. But it was a very close game. Final score 20-17. The Bears look like they are trying to do something that has never been done before. Having the first overall pick and making the playoffs in the same season. I mean, the chances are slim. Chicago's the 13th seed. 2 games behind the Rams, Vikings, and Saints, all tied for the last 2 NFC playoff spots. But still, making some noise late in the season. This is what you need if you're a Bears fan. You need to see results because Carolina's going to tank their way to the 1 seed for you. There's no way they win more than 2 games this season. So you know that as a Bears fan. So now you are just trying to do the best you can to make things happen. And that is exactly what you did against the Browns. You played very well against a good defense. Your defense played well and stifled a Joe Flacco-led offense. Flacco, I think, had 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken, in that game. So that Bears defense looked pretty good against that Browns team. So you are seeing results. There is optimism in Chicago, and I like Chicago to make some noise in the next 2 seasons. All right, now we're going to go over to Carolina, where there was tickets for 45 cents for this game, and no one showed up for that one. It looked like a high school football game being held in an NFL stadium with how bare the stadium looked 18 minutes before kickoff. But either way, the Falcons winning this, or losing this one, in a combined 16 total points scored game. 9-7 final score, Panthers getting the win. And Carolina actually got a second win. I didn't know they would do that. But man, they pulled off a solid win. Of course, it's the 1 week I don't ride with Carolina. But still, looking pretty solid for the Panthers in that win, doing what they had to do. But Atlanta. You were vying for a playoff spot. Now, looking at the playoffs, right? You are now behind the Saints and Buccaneers. You are 1 game behind both of them for the NFC South. You are a game behind the Vikings, Rams, and Saints, all tied up for those last 2 playoff spots. You had a chance to maybe sneak in as a wild card if you don't win the division. Now, you just about blew that chance because you couldn't beat the frickin' Panthers. Up next, we're going to Green Bay, where we have another team collapsing in front of our very eyes. The Green Bay Packers losing. Final score 34-20, and Baker Mayfield had himself a day, man. The Buccaneers looked really good. Like, they looked scary dangerous. So, looking at it now, Tampa Bay is looking really scary at this point, going down the stretch, and they hold the 4 seed. They control their destiny. They can make it so they make the playoffs if they can win out these last 3 games. Meanwhile, Green Bay, come on. Let's have an intervention, buddy. Let's have an intervention. You have 4 winnable games to end the season. You had the Giants, the Packers, you have the Vikings in there, and I can't remember who else you have, but you have another winnable game. 4 very winnable games. You've dropped 2 of them. You have let the Los Angeles Rams come back, and now you might be struggling here. If you can't beat the Vikings, then all of a sudden your playoff hopes go down the crapper. Looking at the Rams situation here. The Rams now are going to jump you, and they have a relatively soft schedule for the next 2 weeks. They got the Saints. They have another, I can't remember who else they have, but they have someone else. And then they close with the Niners, who very well could have the number 1 seed locked up by that point. So you might very well be finding yourself on the outside looking in come the end of Week 18 because you're collapsing in these easy games for you to win. It's frustrating for Green Bay, and I just can't believe it. Alright, so I forgot to talk about the Jets-Dolphins game. Dolphins win 30-0. Jets postmortem's up. Check how I feel about the Jets in that video. And the Dolphins get another big win. Let's move on. Moving up to New Orleans, and we're going to move things along here because we are taking a little bit of time as I'm realizing I am kind of daddling on these games. But final score here, 24-6, Saints over the Giants. It was an absolute Saints annihilation. New York, yeah, you can kindly go back to the back of the line. Yeah, you're not going to make the playoffs, buddy. You are falling down at the end of the run. Tommy DeVito has been up and down. Your season has been defined by manic highs and manic lows. So, once again, Giants fans, what else did you expect? It's tough because you're seeing these amazing, potential hopes, but then they get crushed. Meanwhile, the Saints, critical game for you guys. You win it, and you manage to keep your hopes alive to at least make a wild card spot if you don't win the division. Alright, moving things right along to Tennessee, where the Titans fall to the Texans in overtime with C.J. Stroud getting injured. I did see that. I didn't have a chance to watch the games as things were crazy on Sunday. Driving all day, didn't get a chance to watch the games. But I did see that C.J. Stroud came out of the game for a little bit. So that was interesting. And the Titans still managed to lose. That was a very winnable game for you. You were up big. I think you were up, 13 or 13-0 or something like that? Or you had a big lead, and you still managed to blow it. That is a huge, huge sign for this Titans team that they're not doing it. I described it in their post-mortem video. Go check it out if you haven't already over on the channel. They are trying to do way too many things at once. They are trying to compete now and build for the future, which is just absolutely setting back this franchise years. Meanwhile, Houston, a critical win for you guys. You are now in a four-way tie for the 6th and 7th seeds with Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Buffalo. And you are now tied with the Jacksonville loss that we're going to discuss later on. You are tied with the Colts and the Jags for top seed in the division. So you could still host a playoff game if you play your cards right. Things are looking really bright in Houston. All right, going to the desert where the Niners came to town and absolutely walloped you into last week, Arizona. Final score 45-29. San Fran domination from open to close. It was just game over. San Fran's trying to get that 1 seed, and they have a 1-game advantage over Philadelphia and Dallas for that spot. Meanwhile, Arizona, you were trying to save your season, and you let yourself get curb stomped by the Niners. Nice going, buddies. Please, get yourself some help and figure out what you got to do next season. I outlined it in the postmortem. Go check it out. 4 postmortems went up yesterday, so go ahead and check it out. All right, going to Los Angeles where the Commanders came to town, and they put up a good fight against the Rams, but managed to lose to the Rams, eliminating the Commanders. I discussed more once again. The Commanders in the postmortem went up earlier today, so make sure you go ahead and check that out. But for the Rams, we're going to discuss more about them. That was another solid win for them, and paired with the other key losses in the NFC today, the Rams are now the 7th seed, and they have a chance to control their own destiny. They have a winnable game this week against the Saints on Thursday Night Football. We're going to try to go live for at least the second half of that game. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, by the way, so that you can ring the bell and be notified for that live stream. But either way, the Rams are looking pretty good. They are getting good at the right time. They are getting hot at the right time and strong. This team is dangerous. Nobody wants to face them, just like nobody wants to face the Buffalo Bills in the AFC. The Rams are the Bills of the NFC. Speaking of the Bills, we're going to Buffalo, where the Bills absolutely curb stomped the Dallas Cowboys in the last week. 31-10 final score, Buffalo domination from open to close, and man, that is an absolute annihilation there. Buffalo sitting now as the 9 seed in part of that 4-way tie with Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Houston for the last 2 playoff spots, and you're looking pretty solid. The Bills are looking really good right now. They have a legitimate chance to make a push. Now, there's still 2 games behind Miami for the AFC East, but, here's the big but, Buffalo still has a very good chance at making a playoff spot as a wildcard team, going up against probably the Dolphins, who should very well beat the Dolphins. You could play the Dolphins in back-to-back weeks. I think the Bills play the Dolphins week 18. Dallas, on the other hand, you clinched a playoff spot. Congratulations, but you looked absolutely atrocious in that game. It was absolutely scary bad for you. I don't want to talk more about it. All right, we're going to move over to New England, where the Chiefs came to town and absolutely beat you down. The Patriots were eliminated, so they're just fighting for pride at this point and trying to tank a little bit. So task failed successfully there. They tanked successfully and got the loss. So now they are only 1 game behind the Panthers for the number 1 pick. Meanwhile, Kansas City getting us another win didn't look pretty on the scorecard, only winning by, 10 points to New England? But you got another win. You got in the win column again. You have a 1-game advantage now over the AFC South leader. Right now, that's the Jacksonville Jaguars for the 3 seed. So you're not going to get a 1 seed. You're 2 games behind Baltimore. That ain't going to happen. But you have a chance to maybe face off against the Colts, maybe the Texans or the Bengals, which is a very winnable game for Kansas City. Up next, we're going to go over to Jacksonville, to Duval, where the Ravens came to town and absolutely curb stomped the Jaguars. I don't know what's going on with this Jaguars team. Final score 23-7. But what happened to this Jags offense? Their offense was amazing earlier in the season, but ever since Trevor Lawrence had that ankle sprain, he wasn't looking great. And then he had an incident earlier in that game where he threw the ball and then he had to shake off his right arm a good bit. And passes were going short. Things weren't looking great. He didn't look like Trevor Lawrence for the last 8 minutes of that game. He did not look like Trevor Lawrence. So there is definitely some concerns in Duval over the health of Trevor Lawrence. Meanwhile, the Ravens being the first team in the AFC to clinch a playoff spot, and it is now a 2-horse race between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns for the AFC North, which the Ravens likely seal up next week. Alright, and last but not least for this video, we have the Seattle Seahawks at home beating the Philadelphia Eagles by a final score of 20-17. This game was just about all Philadelphia all the way until about the 4th quarter, whenever finally, Seattle started getting the Jets going, and they decided, hey, maybe we should try and, I don't know, maybe win this football game. So Philadelphia now finds themselves in an interesting spot because now they are really falling off a cliff here, really. I mean, they still have a very solid path to winning the division, but, and here's the big but, they have a very slim chance now to take the number 1 seed away from San Francisco. So that is the bigger storyline out of this game for Philadelphia. They are going to have to be on the road if they want to make a Super Bowl appearance this year, more than likely. Meanwhile, looking at it from the Seahawks perspective, they now find themselves in a really good spot if they can just win out. They have 3 winnable games coming up, and this is a very critical stretch for the Seahawks if they want to make it back to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons under Geno Smith. Alright, well that's about going to do it for me today. If you guys did like, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, as it does help me out a whole lot. It tells me that I'm making content that y'all enjoy and that y'all want to keep coming back to and watch. And I guess with that, make sure if you haven't already, check out my predictions over here, or any of my postmortems, I should say, which will be down over here, the postmortems playlist, so you can go ahead and check those out. And with that, I will see you guys later. Peace out and have a good one.